Marenco and his team at Yale. The DISCO framework consists of a set of automated services which can facilitate interoperation between your resource and your data with the neuroscience information framework. From there, NIF will serve as a uniform research repository, integrating your data within our data federation that contains 75 plus neuroscience databases, and we'll also provide features that will increase exposure and usage of your resource. So in summary, the DISCO services allow NIF to harvest your resource and extend it within our system and the greater neuroscience community. Now, right off the bat, I just want to note that this webinar is very developer-focused and targeted towards the database administrators and a general familiarity with XML documents as well as database structure is going to be required. Having that said, I'm going to do my best to provide an introduction to registry, the DISCO dashboard, and a few of the services. But ultimately, it's important to note that this is a process of collaboration between the resource providers and the NIF interop team, which consists of myself, Luis, Andrea, and Anita. And I will make mention of certain pause points where you could stop and you'll want to check progress with the NIF team, and then we can both move forward together. So without further ado, I just want to give a global look at the DISCO framework, and you'll notice that it consists of 7 main files. This first file is the DISCO XML, which is the main configuration file, and as I'll show later, this file contains descriptions and file paths of the other services. The second is a resource description file, which informs NIF of the resource and contact details. These details ensure that your NIF registry page is up to date and informs search engines about your resource. The third is link out features. Now this is a really great service that allows NIF to serve as a link out broker to NRES or NCBI objects. This means that data or other resources, massive microscopy image stacks that do not translate well to publications, but a reference within these published articles will be linked. And I'll demonstrate later, this creates links from PubMed directly to your site. And it is also important, in fact, for example, Journal of Neuroscience has recently said that they're no longer hosting data. So by hosting your own data and collaborating with NIF, we can help you expose and link out your information, which is also becoming an important requirement for funding in terms of data sharing. Next is the DISCO terminology services, which I won't be discussing in detail today, but provide ontological descriptors of resource elements. For example, the column header information, if you have species or gene or protein. And it will align this data within the semantic web of the NIF standard ontology. For resources that are already stored in common database formats, such as Oracle or SQL, the database schema file specifies data points to be shared. And this service requires particular attention to set up in close collaboration with the NIF interop team, so this will be about as much as I'm saying about it today. Similarly, the new points to your resources RSS feed, and we'll share updates with the community, but we're also still in sort of development on this process, and it's out of the scope of the webinar today. Last, but certainly not least, is the interoperation file. Now this file creates and exchanges data tables with NIF, allowing us to harvest and expose your data. And I'll provide a very example of an interoperation file that extracts data from an XML table and creates a database searchable within NIF. So, in summary, the DISCO framework consists of 7 services that instruct NIF how to interact with your resource or data. I'll be highlighting 4 of these: the main configuration file, the resource description file, the interop, and the link out, while the other 3 will be featured sometime down the road. And I just sort of want to pause here and see if there's any questions or comments before we move forward.
I'm good.
Okay, so you're probably asking, your first question you're asking yourself is, how am I going to get started? To get started, first and foremost, NIF needs to be aware of your resource, and this is done by registering your resource within the NIF registry. And I have a quick video walkthrough here that you will notice starts at the main NIF page, newinfo.org. Now I'm going to go to Neurolex and log in, but this is not a required step. If you already have an account at the Neurolex, you can go ahead and log in, but you don't have to. So you see on the left navigation bar here, I'm going to click register a resource, and then in dialog, I'm going to type in my resource name. Just for an example, I made a database called Jonathan Database. And I'll click Find, and this will search the registry, and it'll say that no resources. What I'm going to do is add a resource. This is where we can fill out these fields, providing a description, other names, the parent organization, and in my case, this would be the University of California at San Diego. And then there's a semicolon in California, and semicolon again, USA. Our supporting agency will be the National Institutes of Health. I want to make sure that everything is spelled right. And then separated to also the Department of Health and Human Services. Now these are the supporting agencies that NIF has a contract with, and not a particular grant, so we're going to leave that field blank. Source type, I'm going to type database, and then you can use the comma and enter another one, software resource. Any abbreviations you might have. And then the pub ID. And what I wanted to do here for the PubMed ID is sort of show where you can grab this information. I'm going to drag up a PubMed window here, something we're probably all familiar with. And you can see that this is just a paper about the Neuroscience Information Framework. And towards the bottom here, I can copy, get this out of the way, and paste in the PubMed ID. Last you want to do is click Save Page. Now what this will do is register the resource within the NIF registry and create the main page for your resource, as well as inform the curation team that a new resource has been nominated. You can see from this main resource page that all the links that I typed in for University of California, National Institutes of Health, database, those are all integrated, and now my resource is a child of those, and then this PubMed ID link will take us right to that PubMed entry. Now you notice here that it says your resource will be curated within 7 days. This represents our first pause point. So within 7 days, the curation team will review your entry and send you an email once it has been curated. Once it's been curated, you can then move on to the next steps. And I just wanted to pause here if that sort of went too fast, if there was any questions or comments on that process.
I've got a quick question.
Uh-huh.
I have a question. If there's, suppose that there's a data set that has more than one publication associated with it, how would the multiple PubMed IDs be entered, or is there a way to do that?
There is a way to do that. You should be able to just comma separate the PubMed IDs.
Okay.
And then we should be able to actually harvest that information reasonably well. If that doesn't work right now, I'll make sure that it works next week. This is Jim, right?
No, this is Jeff.
Oh, Jeff Teeters. Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Okay. Does that...
Yeah, one other question. I noticed that at one field, I think it was for the parent organizations, there were semicolons that were used to separate the values, and then elsewhere commas. Is that critical to use semicolons some places and commas in others?
Actually, the commas separated fields makes it into two different entities, whereas the semicolon doesn't.
Okay.
So actually, if you type in a short name, we're trying to get all the short names like UCSD, should point back to the same entity. We're getting that working, but it's a slow curation process. So if you sort of find your university and separate your fields by semicolons in the same way that we've got on the template, then it'll work for sure. Mm-hmm. If you type in UCSD or Yale, it'll work if we've gotten to it. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I also just wanted to say something about that. That's also a step in the curation process. So if the outside user doesn't know the intricacies of, the way we're doing it, I, as a curator, will go and fix it so that it links with the parents and the other fields.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrea.
Okay. So moving on, to take advantage of the DISCO services, after your resources have been curated, what you're going to want to do is visit your resource page, which is shown to the right, and then down towards the bottom, once you're logged in, it's important that you have to be logged in, you will see this prompt where it says for resource owners. Now you can click to generate a sitemap, and the dialog...
Hey, Jonathan, can you get closer to the phone again? I'm sorry,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
So where it says click here to generate sitemap, you click there, and the dialog box will change to what is shown below. This text explains that your resource has now been registered to the DISCO dashboard and allows you to download the resource description XML file and the main DISCO XML file. And both of these are just very base files right now, sort of just to get you started. But what I would suggest to do, the best place to move on from here is the DISCO dashboard. The DISCO dashboard is a central hub for managing and configuring all of the DISCO services, which makes it very important for the rest of this process. You can access the DISCO dashboard by clicking that link right above Go to DISCO dashboard, but I just wanted to provide this next video to illustrate how to reach the DISCO dashboard from anywhere. As a shortcut, you can just go to disco.newinfo.org, but from the NIF homepage, newinfo.org, you go down and you can click Components, and then you select Interoperation, and this is actually where a lot of the documentation about the DISCO services is located, so this will be a good resource. And then down towards the bottom, you'll see the DISCO dashboard, and it provides you with a link to the dashboard here. And once you're at the dashboard, you can look at all the resources that have had some level of the DISCO services enabled and all the different services listed across the top. You can search for your database using the search field, or you can expand the results per page and just browse. But then once you click, here's an example of what Louis set up for the ModelDB. You can see he's got his contact information there, as well as all the pointers to the different services here. Now, one of the first things that you're going to want to do from the DISCO dashboard is enter your contact information. To do this, click Edit, and then enter the name and email address of your database administrator. Then, down at the bottom, you select Download File and then Process. This will provide you with a new DISCO XML file to place in your resource root along with the resource description file. just to quickly review what we have done this far, we've registered our resource within the NIF registry, and our resource has been curated, permitting us to generate a sitemap. Doing these services will inform and update descriptive details of your resource to NIF and the broader neuroscience community. We have visited the DISCO dashboard and shown how to return to this configuration page, and have put in the contact information for our resource administrator. We've also downloaded disco.xml, the main configuration file, and disco.rd.xml, which is the resource description file. Both of these files will automatically be placed in a local NIF registry or repository that is supposed to serve as backup, but it's up to you as the resource administrator to place these files in the resource root and contact the NIF interop team in order to proceed. So at this point, I wanted to pause again, ask for questions, and then Louis, if you want to comment on the distinction between local and remote files, or if we should save that for later, that's up to you.
I think we save it for later.
Okay.
Okay.
Is everybody still following? Are we okay?
I have another question.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just curious about the definition of a resource. And the reason that I ask is there could be a resource that has a lot of data sets that are from, say, different regions of the brain by different investigators. Now, would each of those data sets, should those, each one be registered as a separate resource, or should just the overall umbrella group that hosts all of those be registered as a resource? Because each one separately, it might be nice for people to be able to find each one separately since they have different.
So I think that it basically boils down to what type of format the data is currently in. And then based on that, if we set up separate interop files, or if we put them all in a single database, I believe like that these are the particular details that are going to be unique to every resource, which is why this is sort of a collaboration process to get those set up. Is that about right?
Yeah, so let me elaborate on that a little bit. Jeff, we've done a lot of thinking and struggling with what is a resource. And we've got some ideas, we've got some definitions of them, but you know, I guess the smallest amount of stuff that belongs in a single resource is probably a single data set. But if you think of, you know, the NIH, it has all of these different very hairy components and offices and whatnot. So, you know, if you think of NIH as a resource, then you can understand that this can get quite complicated very quickly. So we've taken some shortcuts. Basically, if a resource has a huge amount of parts, we tend to separate it out into individual parts that are, you know, most useful to us. But we like to put in a resource as the top level things. For example, PhysioNet has many, many, many different data sets. And we have PhysioNet as a resource, but we also have some of the individual data sets that we wanted to expose and pay special attention to. So we've sort of done both, and they are related to each other, but they are not the same entity necessarily. And we could do it so that they are the same entity also, but you know, that kind of gets a little untenable.
Okay. Yeah, so the bottom line is you could do both.
Yeah, you can definitely do both. You can do it at the level of granularity that you like.
Good.
Okay. So next I want to just move in to sort of give an overview of the 4 services that I mentioned earlier. The first is this main DISCO file. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Here's the structure of the DISCO XML. You'll notice various elements. We got about, where the URL for the resource is formatted. We have the name of the resource and the NIF ID, as well as the contact information. Now, follow the steps that we just previously reviewed, your information automatically populates this file. But what you're going to have to do by looking at this one shown below is a Disco XML set up by Luis for MileDB. And you can see under this services element, all of the 6 Disco services have pointers to where the XML file is located on their end, as well as the format and type details for each particular service. So what's automatically generated for you is basically the skeleton structure, and then this is an example of what it would look like completely filled out. And having a look at resources with services already set up serves as a great example to template from. As always, you feel free to contact the NIF team if you have any questions. Next, I want to show an example of an interop file. This file is of tremendous benefit, as I mentioned, because it exposes your data and makes it searchable within NIF. This will increase accessibility to your data and eventually can provide you with tangible usage statistics that could be used in your next grant or maybe just for bragging rights. What the interop file does is extracts data from a number of formats and creates a database. After the NIF team verifies its functioning, we can include your data within the data federation shown to the bottom right there in the GWT. In this example, taken from the resource Aging Genes, their data is structured in HTML tables on a website. You can see here that this is just an HTML table. If we zoom into the interop file here, you can see that the output element down here says that there's a format type HTML and the container is these tables. The data is within the tables. So this instructs NIF to pull data from those tables and then put it into a database that can then be configured to display within the NIF system. Now, this sort of is getting to the question that we just had. Because this service is able to capture data from databases, APIs, XML, web pages, RDF, and even raw data files such like spreadsheets or PDFs, properly configuring the interop file will require close collaboration with our team, and we're ready to work with resource providers on setting up these services. And I know at first it could seem a bit overwhelming, but once you get these set up, it will automatically include new data as experiments are performed and will ensure you're meeting your data sharing requirements that are now becoming mandatory for funding, with minimal effort on your side once these initial processes are set up. Are there any questions on the Disco file or the interop file?
Are you going to give more examples of the interop file? How would you do this for database? Or could you give more examples?
Maybe Louis can at the end. This is just a brief example. I had to sort of show an example, but no, I didn't make an example for all the different data types.
All the files, all the interop files are publicly available on the Disco server. And as far as explaining every single format type that we are supporting at this moment and all the special keywords that we use in the interop description file, I'm preparing a presentation for that. It could be either rehearsed here before. We could also show it in the neuroinformatics meeting or any other place. But that will take a longer time. That should be a separate presentation.
Yeah.
Well, excuse me, is there documentation in the NIF website on this?
No, we don't have documentation for the interop file. Like I said, we're working on it because this is an ongoing process. As we're speaking right now, we're defining now adding primary keys so we can keep track of updates between rescans and so forth.
I have a just general question. What sort of data should be exposed using interop? And the reason that I ask is that we have a lot of time series data, which is just numbers in some binary file, and that probably wouldn't be very useful to expose. But there must be some kind of general idea of what data is useful to expose. So is there?
Yeah, actually, I'll take that question if you don't mind, Jeff. The general time series data is not very exciting right now. We've exposed a couple of PhysioNet data sets, but excuse me, but they're not very good. Mainly, it would be from those kind of data sets. It would be the metadata about those data sets. For the other data sets, such as the imaging and whatnot, again, the raw images, we will pull the thumbnails, but mostly it'll be the metadata that we expose so that someone can go in and then find that.
Are there guidelines for what kind of metadata should be made available?
Well, it's if you see anything exposed in the in anything like the CRCNS, so things like where was the what are the methods for the particular experiment type? What is the experiment type? Potentially which entree object, which PubMed ID are things linked to? Those are obviously very useful because then we can also do a link out file for that and submit that data to PubMed. So those are the sorts of things that we would like to do, but the secondary kinds of things that we would like to do fairly soon, maybe you could work with us on this, is create a viewer for time series data.
Right.
That would be able to be launched from the NIF interface. I mean, it can go to a third party. I'm not really, I'm not married to any one particular viewer, but that data is really amenable to launching from a viewer. So like we have examples of this in SumsDB where the activation foci for a particular data element, like the subjects were given cocaine and they were scanned, and there are these activation foci. They have X, Y, and Z coordinates. That's not very exciting, so we've been able to actually launch WebCaret from NIF, basically feeding the XYZ coordinates and displaying those things on the brain. And that's a better use of that data in my feeling. But we do provide the XYZ coordinates, but the more useful thing is really to export and view in a viewer. So that would be probably the best thing to do with the time series data.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say, this is Andrea, that on the question before that about documentation for the interop, we do have very high-level documentation from the NIF homepage under NIF components and then choosing interoperation. There is very high-level documentation on the interop. And if you click on web interoperation, once you get to that page, it'll take you to the dashboard where there are many examples of interop files.
Right.
If that's helpful.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so this next example is for the link out services, and the CCDB serves as a good reference because they create huge data sets of microscopy stacks and segmentation information that doesn't translate well to journal articles. So if you have published data in your resource, the link out XML service contains information to where that data is located. NIF then acts as a link out broker, forwarding this information to PubMed such that a person looking at your article is one click away from the relevant data. So you can see that we have the CCDB data, and we have a PubMed, just the main PubMed page. And then down here at the bottom, under link out, you can see that under miscellaneous, there's a resource, the self-centered database, that has this resource element, electron microscopy product, and the link out was provided by the Neuroscience Information Framework. Now, clicking this link from PubMed will take the user directly to the record within your resource. So this is really exposing and providing more link backs back to your website from the highly trafficked PubMed website. And to set up this file, the Interop team has made a great Excel workbook to generate the link out file, and this next video shows you how to do that. And once again, I'm starting from the main NIF homepage. I'm going to click NIF Components and go to Interoperation, which is what Andrea was just referring to. And if we click the third one here, that's for link out, you'll notice that it's using the link out generation tool. It's an Excel spreadsheet that automatically converts the Disco files, and the latest version can be downloaded here. And you will see that version 6.1 is the most recent file. You'll want to download that. Now, importantly, you need to enable macros in order to run this script, in order for it to properly export the XML file. So the first thing I'm going to have to do once I have it open in Excel is enable the macros. I click here, Options, and then Enable. Now, it's pre-populated with information, but you're going to want to put in your NIF ID, your resource URL, your resource name, the same database administrator contact information, and then the name of the link out file. Then when you generate the Disco file here, it will create a new Disco file that now has a link pointing to this this link out file. And then you put in the PubMed IDs, the type, the description, and then the link to that resource, or the link to the data point from that article in your resource, and then that'll generate the link out file. I know that was it sort of went the video real quick, but it makes it real nice and easy to format it, where you can see here we have that this first entry is PubMed. This is the PubMed ID. It was electron microscopy product, and this is the name of the paper, as well as the location of the data at that resource. And just to review, so the news, terminology, and database schema are all other important Disco services that are still sort of in development now, but we are looking forward to presenting in the future. And then also the workflow, which is to set up a scheduler to automatically process your Disco services, then sort of leaving it out of your hands and keeping everything up to date across systems and with the community. For help with setting up any of these services, please contact the Disco team, and our email is shown there below. And I just want to say thank you for your attention for my part of this, and I think we will hand it over to Louis if you guys have any more advanced questions, or if we want to see some more nitty-gritty examples. Everybody there?
So are there any other questions?
Just a real quick question. The Disco XML file, is that a file that is uploaded to NIF, or is that a file that we have on our resource that's read through the web by NIF?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that file, like John mentioned, it can be placed in both locations.
Mm-hmm.
We NIF have a repository of Disco files mostly for those resources which are difficult to deploy these files into. And also we have those files within NIF, so we have like an area where we can modify some of them and create new files and test them, like a test area, before they can be moved to the resource itself. You as the owner of resource, you can use all the tools in the Disco dashboard, create those files, and then move them to your local resource. The advantage of having these files in your own resource is that if in the future more Disco servers get deployed, they can all consume your Disco information from your own resource rather than from another place.
So when we register our resource, do we specify where the Disco XML file is located on our resource at NIF?
To register it into the NIF Disco server, yes.
Okay.
And if you go to the main page, and maybe it's
Do you want me to share your screen?
Request control. So I'm trying to grab control of the screen. Okay. So, you looking at this screen?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it is too small. I should make it bigger.
Yeah, can you please bump that up a little bit?
Okay. So, like you see over here, this resource ModelDB, there are files that are locally, and this is in regard to the NIF repository. This is being used files in the NIF repository. You're going to be looking down around here where that file is located. You see it's located in this.noinfo.org. It's called local resource, and then the directory resource in NIF. Or if you move over to the remote side, it is showing you that this file is located and the root directory of the resource itself. This is for Neuro database. They're using an old version, and this is for ModelDB. He's using a new version. And then right beside the version that the Disco server is using, there is an asterisk. This is the one that is active right now. If I click into ModelDB page, it tells you that it's currently using the local version in NIF, which is pointed to this location. You click over there, and it shows you what it is in that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, a quick question. I'll take my question and then, or if somebody else wants to ask, because I would like to know about your time frame for getting together more of the kind of database schema and direct links into databases, because we have that for one database so far, but most everything else is grabbed out of either XML files or RDF or some other files. What is the time frame for your release?
For the level 3s, you mean?
Yeah, for the level 3s, for the direct
So
database link.
for the level, right now we are really working on the database update process. We can put that on hold and then finish the level 3s if you think it's more important. Because right now, as for level 3s, we're using a separate piece of software that we created a long time. But in order to connect that software to every single level 3 resource, we'll have to duplicate the software many times. And rather to get into that complication, we would like to make that software to be able to connect to multiple resources as a gateway to all of those resources. So if you want, we can put the database update process on hold and then finish the other one.
No, I think, I think either way, I just want to sort of get a rough, rough estimate from you.
For that, I don't know, I have to talk to Rexing, which is Rexing is our main developer in this area.
Okay.
So for upgrading the GD component to be a multiple resource, I would say something like a month, probably. Yes, like 1 month.
Okay. Because
the main reason so long is because it has to support, right now only supports Oracle databases, but and then I believe we have other databases more than Oracle, possibly Postgres and MySQL. So we need to write software that will be able to read the data dictionary from these databases.
I wonder if the
That's, the Burn Mediator took a couple of years to be completed, and a lot of programmers. We're not building a Burn Mediator, we're just making a gateway to the relational. So
yeah,
it's a lot simpler, but nonetheless is complicated.
right. And most, I mean, it seems like most people want to work with web services anyway because they have a little more control over that, and the current Disco interop be able to handle that those web services.
That's correct.
So,
but not every. It will be easier for anyone who has a database, even if you don't have a website, to share a database connection with us.
yeah.
You know, and then anyone who has their information in a relational database, they can just new database user, grant that user just read only privileged portion of the database, and then give us that connection parameters, and we can grab certain information from that. That's like a lot easier for anyone to do that, build a web service and maintaining it.
Yeah. True. Well, it's how about anyone else? Which was very good.
There was a question about the the link out interrupt format. So, like you see here, all these resources that are using this particular format, this interrupt is the format that we built for NIF and for populating the federation within NIF. So all these databases, we have scripts, and all these scripts, anyone interested in looking into it, so you can open it, like for example this one, and it tells you here what type of script is this one. This is a crawler that is going to parse this website, and we have other ones like needs from Japan. They have their own language of specifying results in XML, so we can also parse them out. And there are others, one like we have
CocoMac is another XML.
This grant is actually HTML. Yes, this is HTML. It tells you right.
Could you show and maybe describe a little bit of one which is a database?
Say that again?
I mean, I think could you describe one of these files that is wrapped in a database? So these are essentially like HTML wrappers. Now you have some regular kind of path expressions to extract
That's correct.
element information.
This file.
Can you describe one that is like a database, access to database?
Or you want an example that, or one of these that access a database?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these are
That's
level
the
2. Well, we define level 2.5s, so they don't connect to a database directly, and that's what Anita questioned initially. We have another program called GD, and that program actually connects directly to a database, and then I don't know if there is what is the name? I'm gonna try to show you. And yeah, this is our level 3 gateway, and right now it's saying for example, this is for the resource.
Yeah, that's for the antibody database.
Yes, here's the schema. So what you do initially in this program is, do you have username and password? Can you just go in? Here it's tracing, it's trying to connect to the system.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure who asked this question, but this piece is kind of the most in progress part, the
So yeah,
interop file.
so
If you have a web service that you can share, then we can parse that, immediately. This one is a little more in progress, so we should be able
yeah,
to.
so over here, from here, what we do with this software is we connect to a database using a username and a password that is provided to us. And then the initial step that we do here is we extract the schema of the database, and from that schema, we choose which an administrator within NIF will choose which fields on which tables he wants to use to be shared with other resources, and especially to the DISCO dashboard, because this application called GD, it doesn't make part of the dashboard. It's like a gateway that connects on one side to a database, and on the other side it creates like a web service to share that information from that database. So there are things you can do with this application, like you can filter the information coming out of the database, you can pick certain fields, and also you can write scripts in there and save it as a view that will generate information for link outs. And that's how we also want to implement some of the link out coming out of information that we already tapping from another website. Because in some cases we track information directly with a DISCO interrupt inside NIF, but the link out information is already in those tables. We don't want to write another link out script, but we want to write a SQL statement against the database and grab the link out information out of that. So like Anita mentioned, this is still in development, and we're going to move into this later on and then put them in a way that could be better explained and described. It was pretty much like a test module.
Okay. All right, but so I understand it's in development, so I guess we'll stop asking questions. But just one more. So basically, you are able to export or to select one database and some of the attributes, and that gets exported somehow into the NIF framework.
I can hear you very well.
Oh, sorry. What I was going to ask is, where do you have also a way of mapping the attributes that from the tables to the ontology, or
No.
what do you do? Do you just present, basically, you give an access point to the database, or is there more like a mapping to ontological terms or anything like that?
Or you're talking about the interoperation within DISCO. Until this moment, what we have implemented is a way to extract the data and create relational tables in our database federation in the NIF crawler data repository. As far as mapping those terms, the values in those tables to terminology, we haven't done that yet within the DISCO framework. But there are plans to do that. Right now, Anita probably will answer you better how we do that part at this moment.
Yeah, that's actually a secondary step typically. So typically what we will do is start with getting the data in, and then if there isn't already a mapping, then we will try to map the terms to ontology. We have some automated parsing that occurs. The terms are mapped to an existing ontology. We should do that fairly quickly with some automated tools. And if not, there are a couple of different services that we can use on our end to basically do that. But if you already have mapping files or a mapping web service that we can grab, we'll certainly be able to use the mapping that you've already done, so that will be reasonable. Does that answer or what kind of mapping do you have?
Well, I was thinking more for the schema map. So, you have a table with name and the attribute of that table with some name, and I assume those attributes, not the values, just the field names, they are mapped somehow to some ontology.
Yes, there's another, basically there's another piece, one of these files that Jonathan did not discuss, which is taking the database table where we have the DISCO warehouse and then putting them out to the front end, which is the web interface. And so that also is defined by an XML file. And that XML file will have those kinds of attributes as part of it. So there will be keywords that are linked, and also we're starting to play a little bit with the weighting by moving around the column weights for some of the different columns and that kind of thing. So it should be, and that's where we will map to ontology. We have some of the rudimentary functions working. We don't have things like union of this class minus that subclass, but we do have some of the rudimentary functions, like this is a gene, which is an identifier of, Bernlex, 2 or something, or and our ontology is fairly expansive. We cover much of Go, as well as the protein ontology. We have some of our own, but we use a lot of the community ontologies and have been able to import them through our services. So what you can actually do is map to most of the kind of standard community ontologies, and we should be able to read that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to learn more about NIF. I mean, my question may be a bit naive because I don't fully understand all the details yet.
Yeah.
I'd like to show over here. Oh, what, please? Oh, jeez. In our previously, we were experimenting in Disco using the protocols within SenseLab, the eAVCR. So we have like all the databases in AVCR. We created this Disco lexicon. This is not like something that we had defined, but it's something that we pick up from the eAVCR framework. So what I did here was I clicked this button, this URL, and it opened this file, which is this prototype of a Disco terminology file. And it has term namespaces as well as terms. Namespaces, they talk to, like, for example, this is a column, a class, neurotransmitter. And there is a UML, at this moment we were using UMLS concept IDs. So it's telling you that this class is mapped to this UMLS concept ID. And they go down to, so all the classes, they're mapped to, if they have a ontology term ID, they have it here. Now for the terms that inside the model DB, there are all these receptors and neurotransmitters, and they have a map UUID for it, which is the concept ID. What we plan to do in SenseLab is to translate these ones to NIF standard terms, IDs. And this is a way how to map in our own terms into NIF terms. So in this side, we can put whatever. So ModelDB, they can use whatever terminology they feel better for describing their concepts, but they also going to be mapped to something NIF standard.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a question? I could hardly hear it.
I didn't hear anything.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank all of you very, very much for taking this time to try and understand this tool, or rather suite of tools developed by Dr. Luis Marenco. And I would like to thank very much also Louis and Jonathan for presenting these tools to us today. So thank you all, and we are all available by email and phone if you have if you run into any problems trying to do this yourself. We are more than happy to help, and actually it'll potentially help us make the documentation better. So again, thank you all very much, and
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end.